What if the fluorescent lights over your head weren't humming with electricity, but with attention, and the store aisles were arranged to guide you the way a throat guides a breath? Some stories are too absurd to be true, but what if retail's late-night quiet is exactly where the world thins? Welcome back to the channel, Whispering Abyss. Tonight, I have something truly haunting for you. From lost aisles that redraw themselves to intercoms that answer questions you didn't ask, every story is a mystery waiting to unfold. Which story creeped you out the most? Let me know in the comments, so I can pretend I'll sleep after reading them. Story 1. The blue vest that wouldn't clock out. You're gonna think I am exaggerating, but the truth is simple. At 3:17 a.m., the time clock exhaled, and something in the store listened back. Night shift settles on your skin like cooler air after a storm. You hear the buzz of lights over your head and feel in your molars. Lemon cleaner swims with a rubber smell of pallet wheels, and every beep of the scanner pecks at your nerves like a patient woodpecker. The aisles look harmless until you notice how they curve, not straight, but inward, the way a room leans when you are alone and sleep-deprived. It's the kind of quiet that makes you want to say something just to confirm there is still a world, even if it talks back. I was covering overtime for the third week in a row. Benefits do that to a person. You start counting the hours like pearls and forget your fingers are bleeding. Manager said if I closed 2 more nights, I could lock in a better schedule. I nodded like I always do, because yes has a way of softening the floor under your feet. It was just me, the janitor, and the intercom that coughs at the top of the hour. The clock would spit my card at 6 on the dot, and I would drive home like a ghost trying on a body. At 2:59, I clocked in for the extra stretch, and the punch tape printed yesterday's date. I stared at it, annoyed more than afraid. Machines mess up. Management messes up more. I smacked the side with my palm, and the little printer breathed out another strip that said 3:17 a.m. yesterday again. The clock face stuttered between 3:16 and 3:17 like it was practicing. The intercom hissed the way a stranger inhales before saying your name. What would you have done then? The vest was waiting on the lost and found shelf. It was the standard blue, frayed in a way that makes you want to smooth it. Name tag said Myrna in fat permanent marker, but there was no Myrna on our roster. I know because I'm petty and I memorize the list every Friday, looking for the people who got better schedules than me. The vest sat folded like a waiting mouth. When I looked away and back again, the fold seemed tighter. The scanner on the returns desk chirped once, unasked, like a heartbeat that had decided to be helpful. The end cap mirror near health and beauty tilted just enough to show me at an angle. I moved my hand, and my reflection moved a half beat too early, as if it had expected me to wave. The glass hummed with the lights. It felt like standing at the lip of a stage where the crowd isn't noisy yet. I told myself I was tired. I told myself that lemon cleaner always smells stronger near the time clock. I told myself this was fine. The intercom, which no one pressed, answered anyway with a tiny breath. Back in the stockroom were 5 chalk tally marks at shoulder height by the door, drawn quick and impatient. I had never noticed them. The janitor, a quiet man with soft-soled shoes, pushed his mop past and pretended not to see. When I asked if he had a piece of chalk earlier, he shook his head and rolled away. Chalk dust clung to the rim of the door, like someone had been counting down and given up. My scanner chirped twice, then once. It had never done that before. The pallet jack should have stayed where I left it by Frozen, but it drifted, smooth as a sigh, back toward the front lanes. I chased, feeling stupid, heels tapping, and when I reached the registers, the jack had angled itself to face the time clock. The little digital display blinked 3:17 yesterday and then 3:17 today, as if I had a choice. The scanner on my hip started giving double beeps like a heartbeat that had learned to worry. I squeezed the handle of the jack and felt the whir of something alive underneath the metal. The overnight manager tried to log in around 3:30. I heard his key clicks and the frustrated sigh when the monitor flashed access denied. He knocked on the office door from the inside because I was standing in the hall outside and we could both see each other through the glass. He mouthed something I could not hear. The intercom hiss drowned him, then the screen showed camera feeds. I was in 2 aisles at once. In one feed, I pushed a pallet jack. In another, I stood by the end cap mirror. It took me a second to notice both versions of me were wearing blue. Security locks engage on a timer none of us ever see. You learn it when the doors decide to be unhelpful. The lights shifted into power saver, one out of every 2 tubes going cold, and the shadows flashed longer like the store was blinking. Every aisle end cap I passed had the vest folded on it, tag up, Myrna looking like a word that would fit my chest if I let it. I picked it up once and dropped it. It was heavier than cloth. It was the weight of someone's shift. By 4 o'clock, the radios started looping. We have a script for emergencies, and I have set it into that crackling channel more than I have said I love you. Tonight, the radio spoke first. The phrase was simple: assistance required at timekeeping. It sounded like me if I stayed up too long. The janitor rounded the corner, eyes on me, then on the mop bucket, then on the clock. He opened his mouth, closed it, and left the mop. It rolled into a dark aisle by itself and never came out again. Where could it hide in a place that sells brooms? I called the emergency number by the back door. 3 bars dropped to 1, then none. Then the phone offered me airplane mode like that would help under all these lights. The keypad on the steel exit asked for a supervisor code. I did not have one. The vest on my arm felt like a suggestion. My heart made the scanner's 2-beat sound. The lemon cleaner smell pooled near the clock. Somewhere behind me, a price gun clicked its teeth without a hand on it. The store lined up around me like a mouth considering a bite. I could have waited this out, but there's a point at which waiting is the same as answering yes. I had a stack of time cards because the printer chews them if you feed them alone. The only trick we have is to jam a card in the slot, so the clock chokes and a human has to fix it. I slipped my own card in crooked. It stuck and the machine made a grinding, ugly sound, then coughed out a strip that said 3:17 a.m. Yesterday, my name printed twice. I had lost proof of tonight's hours. My stomach dropped like a mistake at payroll. Right then, I decided the manager was behind it. It made a mean sort of sense. The double entries on the cameras, my card printed twice, the locked doors. If he could mess with timekeeping, he could shave my hours and pad his. Petty crime dressed in fluorescent light. I marched to the office and pounded on the glass. He pulled up an old report I had never seen. Punch tapes clipped with paper clips and coffee stains. The dates were from years before he worked here. The same double entries, the same 3:17. I was angry that the blame had nowhere warm to sit. The intercom spoke my name for the first time. It came soft, like someone leaning in to be kind. Danny, I do not like my name in someone else's mouth. Assistance required at timekeeping. It said next, as if reading from script, but finally learning the nuance. The vest warmed against my forearms. I am not foolish enough to put on unknown clothes in a haunted night, but a supervisor code sat in the liner tag, like a secret sewn for a friend. If I wore it, I could open the emergency door and let the cold in. Choices have a way of making themselves. I put on the vest. It settled like a hand. The scanner on my hip gave one gentle beep, then matched the rhythm of my heart as if it had been waiting to learn the tempo. The exit keypad side opened as soon as I typed the code from the tag. The outside air was there, dark and ordinary. I should have walked through right then, but the clock coughed behind me and printed another tape. It was me again, clocked in at 3:17. I looked down, and the name tag did not say Myrna anymore. It said Danny, black marker sinking into the weave. The intercom asked, almost shy, "Do you want the hours?" It is a cruel question at 4 in the morning. Hours mean medicine and food, and a car that will still start in January. "I want my shift to end," I said. The store made a small, disappointed sound that felt like the lights dimming. The office computer flickered, the camera feeds rolled, and both of me turned their heads at once. I smelled lemon cleaner, so strong it tasted like rind. I thought of the 5 chalk marks by the stockroom. Someone had counted, and someone had quit counting, and someone had gone on anyway. From the ceiling, the speaker crackled, and a voice slid out that was not mine and not the manager's. It was careful. It was practiced. I wore it to keep my benefits, it said. Just one more night. Just until 6. The word Myrna appeared in my head with the weight of a time-off request no one processed. If the vest does not clock out by 6 a.m., the hours roll into yesterday. The voice continued, gentle as a policy told too often. Yesterday does not post. But if someone else wears it and clocks out, the shift transfers. The rules sounded like a loophole that had learned to chew. "I'm not taking your trap," I said, but I'd already put my arms through. The vest tightened, not painful, just firm, like a manager straightening your collar before a secret shop. The intercom breathed in and out with me. My reflection in the end cap mirror smiled half a second before I did, and I hated it with an honest, exhausted hate. "You do not have to," the voice said, softer now. "You can open the door." The keypad light shifted from green back to red. Somewhere, the power saver counted down its next cycle. I walked toward the time clock slowly, like approaching an animal. The punch slot looked wider. The printer curled out a new tongue of paper and waited. The scanner on my hip kept the beat. The aisle caps I passed had the vest folded on them again. Only now I realized they were empty. I was wearing the store's idea of me, not my vest. That is a sentence I would not have understood before tonight. The janitor's abandoned mop handle leaned against seasonal, dripping a slow trail like the seconds between heartbeats. What would you have done in my place, with morning close enough to smell? I fed the time card. The machine took it, then held still. The intercom whispered, "Clock out, clock out, clock out," like a lullaby with a stutter. The printer finally moved at 3:17 a.m. The tape spun and did not cut. When it stopped, it said Myrna, then my name, then Myrna again, like 2 magnets snapping into one slot. The lights above the registers brightened, then fell. The camera feeds showed me alone in every aisle, which is not possible unless you're scheduled. I thought of the chalk marks and understood why there were only 5. The 6th person had stopped counting and started wearing. "You can go," the intercom lied kindly. The exit light flashed green again. The vest loosened at the shoulders, as if relieved. I walked to the door and touched the push bar. Cold air touched my hand back. There's a softness to choosing wrong that feels like sleep. I took one step and heard the scanner stop. The silence swallowed the beat, and I knew exactly what the echo would be. The vest tightened again and held. "Please," the voice said, raw now. "I did this to leave. I need you to do it to finish. The kind of favor that becomes your life if you say yes." I turned from the door. The choice does not look noble on paper. It looked like tired eyes and a calculator in my head. I walked back to the clock. The printer began to hum, then stutter, then hum again. I hit the intercom button with my elbow and asked the empty store, "What happens if no one wears it?" The breath from a speaker did not answer. The mirror did a little. My reflection stayed while I moved, then caught up, smiling, polite, patient. I slid the card again. The tape spat out a single number, 6 a.m., and then zeros. The lights came up full at 6 o'clock like nothing had happened. The radio cleared and someone laughed down the hall, arriving for morning shift, unaware of the math I had been doing with my soul. The manager opened the office door, eyes red, and asked if I was okay. I nodded. I'm always okay in a way that keeps me far from rest. I removed the vest and folded it along the same creases I had seen waiting at each aisle. It was light now, ordinary. I sat on the lost and found shelf. The lemon cleaner smell faded to a suggestion. Payroll posted that afternoon. My hours were there, clean and full. The manager even added the overtime I thought I had lost. He said a glitch fixed itself at 6. He said the punch tape looked odd, but resolved. And he smiled in that way people smile when they are relieved the weirdness likes them. I drove home in daylight and did not turn on the radio because I did not want anything speaking in my car. In my passenger seat sat the empty space where the vest had been on my shoulders and the heavier space where the decision would sit for a long time. Except that night when I brushed my teeth, I saw it. The bathroom mirror flickered just once, the way cheap bulbs do, and my reflection lifted its hand before I did. It was courteous about it, like the store had taught it manners. In the silence between my breaths, something tiny beeped, 2 notes, not from any device in my apartment. I smelled lemon in the air, not the fruit, but that cleaner that pools near clocks. I fell asleep with the lights on and woke to a slip of paper on my kitchen table. It looked like a receipt. No logo, just the punch tape font. It said 3:17 a.m. and my name, and then a second name that blurred if I stared. Myrna. Under the names, 1 line of print. Assistance required at timekeeping. I turned the paper over. In chalky white, like someone had dragged a stone across the back, were 6 tally marks. You only make the 6th mark when you have counted 5 before. The intercom hiss of my apartment heater sounded like a breath. The lights hummed in my molars. I did not go back the next night. I texted that I was sick and deserved the lie. The manager replied with a thumbs up. I felt the hour between 3 and 4 waver like heat above asphalt. At 3:17, my phone rang from an unknown store number. Twice, then went silent. I did not pick up. The scanner in my memory kept beeping without a body to wear it. The vest stayed at the store. The vest does not mind where it waits. It is patient the way water is patient. It has learned from time. It knows about benefits and mortgages and the word yes. A week later, I crossed the parking lot in daylight to pick up laundry soap. I told myself I would be quick. Automatic doors inhaled me. Morning staff smiled and asked if I needed help finding anything. I smiled back like a person you could trust with a register till. You would be amazed how easy it is to look awake. At the end cap near health and beauty, the mirror tilted a fraction. I raised my hand and did not move. The reflection raised its hand, polite as ever, a half beat early, like it was saving me time. I bought the soap, paid cash, and left. At home, I taped the punch slip inside a kitchen drawer. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because throwing it away felt like clocking in. The tally marks face the wood. Sometimes at night, I hear the intercom in my vents, the way buildings confess their heat. I sleep in pieces. I keep my own vest in a box under the bed and keep telling myself I will find a new job with worse lights and kinder clocks. You might think the store is done with me. You might think the schedule closes where I chose. The last time I opened that drawer, there was another slip under the first. Same font, same hour, different name beneath mine. It blurred until I said aloud. You would know it if you have ever covered a shift for a friend who was out of sick days. Someone wore it. Someone said yes. Someone opened the door. The vest is patient, but it does not like to be empty. The mirror in my hall tilted by itself and straightened, as if practicing being helpful. I pressed my palm to it and felt the humming lights from a place that is always yesterday. If you hear an intercom breathe your name at 3:17 a.m., turn around, even if turning means giving up hours you think you need. Some doors open only one way. Some schedules are mouths. If you have ever smelled lemon and printer heat together in the middle of the night, you already know. The store never had to keep me. It taught me to keep myself. And sometimes when the apartment is still and the clock is quiet, I listen to my heartbeat and wonder who learned from whom. Now, I will ask you the question the intercom asked me, softly, like a favor you do not have to grant. Do you want the hours? Story 2. Aisle 13 wasn't on the map when I turned the corner. The aisle number jumped from 12 straight to 14, like the store had skipped a breath and hoped I would not notice. Freezer hum pressed on my ears from produce. The waxed floor threw back a cold white glow, and that permanent smell of wet cardboard hung in the air where the pallet wrappers sweat. If you have ever worked nights, you know how the building feels like a chest that rises and falls around you. I stared at the sign that said 12, then the next that said 14, and my scanner chirped once as if it agreed with the lie. I am Marcus, assistant manager on probation. Corporate loves that word. It tastes like a warning wrapped in a promise. 2 weeks back, I miscounted an inbound case lot during an audit, and the new cameras caught my math in cruel honesty. Tonight was supposed to be my fix. A missing pallet of detergent was logged as received, but the system tagged it in no aisle currently mapped. Prove you can find what the software cannot, my district lead said, and we will pretend the audit never happened. Reputation, livelihood, and what passes for sanity at 3 a.m. were all stacked on one rolling card. The reason to stay was simple. If I found the pallet before open, my name would crawl out of the probation list and back into the good graces column. If I did not, my hours would shrink until my rent learned a new definition of late. I told myself this was numbers work. The scanner pinged a faint arrow pointing me between aisle 12 and aisle 14, like a compass trained on a missing cardinal direction. I printed the floor map from the back office and ran my finger down a grid. There was number 13, not an error, just a gap, so clean the printer did not know it was lying. The scanner was not shy about the joke. It lit up green and flashed item located, then threw an error 4.0 for like a web page that had forgotten how to exist. I smacked its side, and the battery icon dipped from 10% to 9. The intercom sizzled with a burst of static above my head, a brief hiss like a mouth deciding whether to speak. From the far end of the store came the squeak of an ungreased cartwheel, here and gone. Aisle 12 shimmered with soap and cereal, aisle 14 with cat litter and laundry. The middle was only light, or maybe it was missing light, which is worse. You see things in the margins first. On the cinder block near the break room, under a faded safety poster, someone had scrawled in grease pencil, "Do not count odd past 11." I felt petty enough to be offended at the grammar before the meaning laid itself flat and obvious. Past 11, you skip. Near the seam between 12 and 14, a single wet footprint pointed into nothing. No matching exit print. The floor crew had already done their pass. The shape was too small for a boot and too wide for a heel, like a slip-on. It led into a blank space the map refused to draw, then stopped where air should have been. I listened for radios. We all keep them clipped, even when the store is a quarter-mile wide and empty as a church at noon. The channel hissed, but I caught a faint voice counting. Not the numbers I expected. 11, 12, 14, 14, 14. Then the coil cleared as if embarrassed. My scanner pinged again, and the arrow nudged me into the empty strip. Battery 8% now, climbing toward the kind of deadline that makes people hurry in the wrong direction. I told myself it was a glitch within a glitch. That is how you keep moving when you should not. I followed the footprint. The wheel's squeak returned. ahead of me by a few seconds, like a child who does not know they should hide. My radio echoed my last transmission from 3 minutes ago, the after sound of my own voice asking if anyone was on the floor with me. I had not asked that yet. The digital aisle markers glitched in a subtle wave. 12 flickered. 14 flickered. In that stutter, the number 13 flashed between them like a blink good at pretending it did not happen. I put 1 foot forward into space that should have been open tile, and fluorescent tubes hummed awake beyond a threshold I could not see until I crossed it. Light is different in places that are not meant to exist. It lands on you as if it is deciding where you go next. The air on my arms cooled from warehouse to dairy case in a single step. The sound of the building's breath changed from whole chest to a whisper close to my ear. My scanner's chirp switched to a softer tone and synced itself to the nervous drum in my throat. The aisle I walked into had shelving identical to ours, but every label was not quite right. Ingredients were backward. Expiration dates had no month, just a year that had not arrived. I pushed my cart forward and the wheels rolled easier than they should have on fresh wax. The detergent I needed sat in the second bay, right where we keep it in aisle 6. The spines of the bottles faced out with cheerful promise, but the brand names were fuzzy when I looked straight at them. When I shifted my gaze, they popped sharp and wrong. A cartwheel squeaked ahead, and I turned right fast, but the next aisle end cap was empty. The cart still rolled. I grabbed it. It kept moving a full inch against my hand, like something on the other side had not agreed that I was touching it. The scanner locked with a sound that made every hair on my arm lean forward. Item found, the display said, then flattened into a second line. User located. I do not like when machines talk about me like I am part of inventory. I backed the cart into the middle and aimed it toward where I had come in. I could see the brighter expanse of the main floor at the far end, the ages-old tan that always feels like a compromise between blue and cheap. I pushed. At the end, I turned right for the main lane and stepped between cereal on both sides the way I had 5 seconds before. The store had decided that forward was a circle. Loops only feel harmless for the first lap. I picked up my pace. Shelf tags clicked against their clips with the faintest wind. I pulled out my phone to check the security camera feeds on the manager app, watched myself from a bird's eye view, and went cold. I was not walking. I was standing still in the middle of the aisle, hand on the cart, mouth open. Every step I took sent the figure in the feet a fraction of an inch further into stillness, as if movement and rest had argued and rest had the policy on its side. I stepped. The feed did not. Somewhere behind me, footsteps found my rhythm and matched it exactly. I tried the intercom button on the end cap mic. The red light came on, bright as a promise, then died the moment I spoke. My radio chirped awake, but it played yesterday's messages in my own voice, shift change roll calls, and jokes about a coupon error from 11 p.m. At the far end, the doorway I had entered was stacked with box paper towels, new, barcodes crisp, each pallet tag with a timestamp code that was 1 minute in the future and counting. I put my shoulder against the stack and felt the stable weight of full stock. The exit had been filled by something that did not exist 10 seconds ago. Desperation makes you try things. I keyed in the back office app on my phone and navigated to locations and aisle map. The screen refused to show 13. So I forced a system reset on the map coverage, deleting local cache data and refreshing from Central. It wiped the current store plan and pulled down the last known good configuration. For a long second, the map was a blank grid with no departments, no labels, nothing at all. I had killed the blueprint. When it repopulated, my name disappeared from the active schedule block. When the system reloads without you in it, you learn a lot about whether you matter. A clipboard leaned against the base of the shelving, trapped behind a set of safety cones that did not belong to any living shift. It was an old remodel binder, the kind with plastic sleeves and coffee rings from a decade ago. Inside, a memo from 2011 talked around a serious thing the way managers do when corporate writes the words for them. A night associate went missing during a reset, Section 30 to Section 34, and the remodel team sealed a lane until the new planograms could absorb it. The memo did not say aisle 13. A sticky note tucked in the sleeve did. In a left-handed scrawl, "You find it when you look for what you lost." My brain reached for an easier answer. Hallucination was a soft word with a hard edge. I had not slept right in days. The pallet miscount bled into double shifts. I found an empty energy drink tucked behind the base cap, the exact brand from my locker, my initials in sharp on the bottom next to a date. It had expired last month. I told myself I had left it here. Tired people leave themselves notes they do not remember. It felt true for one quiet second, like a story you would accept just to sit down. Then my phone vibrated with a security push. The front door camera tagged a motion event with a timestamp that matched my watch to the minute. Not a replay, not a ghost of a recording. The feed showed the entrance dark and still. The text overlay in the corner flickered 313, 314, 315, no cut, no wrong frame rate. A tone chimed in my ear. The intercom static returned, and the counting voice spoke softly. 11, 12, 14, 14, 14. The scanner's beep synced to the pulse in my throat and set the metronome of a decision I had hoped to avoid. I did the foolish thing and called out. If you have ever shouted your own name in a long aisle, you know how the word returns with new weight. The radio answered not with voices, but with a delay. I heard me again from 30 seconds ago, and the sound guided me left toward the center of the store where the ceiling is highest and the air feels thin. The scanner chirped and drew a new line on its tiny map. Exit, it read, in clean block letters, 13 meters ahead. My battery flashed 7% and held there like a dare. I ran. At the far end, the aisle did not end. It folded into a small square of space where shelving met blank wall. On that wall, someone had mounted a mirror covered in barcode stickers, dense as scales. The glass threw back a slightly colder version of me, skin grayed by fluorescent truth. I lifted my hand, and my reflection lifted a breath before I did, eager to please. Each sticker hummed at a different pitch, the song scanners sing when they are working properly. I reached for a tag and felt the little ridges of the code warm under my finger as if they had blood in them. The scanner decided on me. Inventory mismatch. It said in a friendly voice, like the calm bank teller who counts your money and finds less than you hoped. Personnel asset not returned. It wrote my title on the next line, as if that was a brand name it enjoyed. Assistant Manager Marcus. User located. Shelf required. It did not have the manners to look sorry. The battery flashed 6%. I thought about the grease pencil warning. Do not count odd past 11. I thought about the missing pallet and how the system wanted the universe to match its report. I peeled the barcode from the mirror. It took effort. The adhesive did not want to surrender. When I freed it, the scanner grabbed the tone like a singer finding a note. Reshelving complete, it said. The aisle flickered like cheap video. The cereals swapped positions in a blink. My shoes adjusted by an inch without me moving. The cart leaned toward the center as if gravity had picked a new direction. Behind the glass, my reflection smiled with polite relief, then stopped before I did, a host awaiting approval. The world did not break. It changed policy. I tried to back away and ended up in the same square of space with the same mirror, the same humming codes. Battery 5%. The air thinned like an elevator cresting a floor. I pointed the scanner in my chest with a kind of nasty curiosity and pulled the trigger. The beep landed clean. The screen filled itself with product detail in a font meant for pricing. SKU Marcus. Category: Management Accessory. Status: In stock. The price field blinked zeros and waited for a human to lie. I typed 0 out of reflex, the way you void something you are embarrassed to charge. Price override requires manager code 13, the scanner said, pleasant again. The number sat there and did not change no matter how I jabbed at the keys. In the mirror, the barcode stickers looked like the kind of insects that hold still when you stare and run when you blink. The intercom hissed. 14, 14, 14. My battery hit 4% and shaped the next few minutes like a mouth shapes vowels. I peeled another sticker and stuck it to my lanyard as if naming myself could help. The scanner read it and translated me into an aisle location. 13, the display said, right in the center, with confidence that offended me. I wanted to laugh and could not find a breath. The cart beside me rolled a polite inch away as if it needed to give me space to become whatever the map now said I was. Something small scuttled in the base cap. I did not like when shelves make the sounds of living things. I ran the entire length again, a sprint that kept me inside the same 20 yards of floor. Phone in my pocket buzzed with a text from the morning opener. "You good?" she wrote. "Camera says you're standing in the cereal like a mannequin. Battery 3%. I typed back "I'm stuck" and watched the typing bubble on my screen fill with my own dots and stop. The response came from me 5 minutes ago. All good. The phone heat against my thigh climbed until I could feel a quiet burn. The scanner beep lined up with my heart and the hum of the lights. I do not know what you would do with 2% left. I made a choice I could not undo. I followed the delayed echo of my voice toward the square again. The mirror waited like an interviewer who has already decided. I met my own eyes, and I saw the thing I had tried not to see since I got the promotion. The system loves a neat table. It loves when the number of hands match the count in the policy. It does not care what the hands are attached to. I tore another sticker and pressed it to the inside of my wrist and felt the adhesive turn warm like a pulse. Reshelving complete, the scanner said for the second time, kind as a lullaby. The air smelled like wet cardboard again, and the wax on the floor caught the lights in a single twitch. I did not see the aisle vanish. It simply failed to be where I expected when I turned. The shelving shivered, and aisle 13 flickered between cereal and nothing, between stacked detergent and bare concrete, like a flipbook held by a child learning to be gentle. My battery hit 1%, and the screen dimmed to preserve itself. A joke so cruel it made me grin at my own reflection. I try one last trick. I scanned the employee badge on my lanyard. The beep came, soft, nearly affectionate. The screen gave me a new line. Return to shelf. It offered a location code that matched the little heat map in the manager app. I had returned myself. I did not feel different. That's the worst part. You do not know when the system has logged you. You just learn later that your name is a field that can be edited and sometimes deleted. The voice in the intercom softened the way a storm softens into mist. 13. It tried once, low and uncertain, and then returned to the safer number it preferred. Morning is a ripcord. It yanks you whether you hold on or not. The lights brightened all at once. Someone unlocked the front door and whistled a song from 6 years ago. The intercom cleared its throat and welcomed no one in particular. The gap between 12 and 14 felt solid, blank as a wall. I walked straight through it into 14 and blinked at the ordinary end cap with cat litter stacked high. My phone buzzed again, and the time stamped itself with a brightness that made me squint. I checked the schedule app. My name was not on today. My name was not on tomorrow. There was a red dot beside my profile, and the word terminated sat there like a price that had finally gone through. They found nothing wrong with the store. Of course they did not. The opener told me I looked pale, then stopped and frowned in a way that said she had forgotten my name. The pallet of detergent had been logged correctly on the morning counts. Good job to whoever finally fixed the misplacement, the district lead texted into the group thread. I stood in seasonal and read it 3 times and did not answer. The map on the office computer showed all aisles in sequence. Whoever wrote the warning on the wall under the safety poster had either lied or told the only truth that ever mattered. New hires learn the rhythm of barcode beeps like they learn where we hide the good box cutters. Sometimes when they scan in aisle 6, a tone comes back that is a hair too low, and the handheld flashes a label that does not make sense. Marcus, it reads in stock. Then the screen corrects to the detergent brand, and everyone laughs because the scanner is old. When it happens, the air shifts cooler, like the freezer decided to breathe on your neck. Most nights nobody notices. The store is a busy mouth. It chews and swallows and keeps smiling and calls us good business. I went home before the morning meeting because there was nothing a meeting could do to my name that the system had not already done. The mirror in my apartment did not play tricks. It held my eyes and waited like a friend, unsure what comfort would help. I slept without dreaming and woke to a push notification from the scanner app one no longer had a right to access. Junction found, it said 13 and 14. The alert cleared itself before I could swipe. I did not imagine the sound that followed. A tiny beep came from the kitchen, exactly the tone of our handhelds, followed by the softest hiss of static, like a building catching its breath far away. If you come on night shift and you see a wet footprint that goes nowhere, you can pretend it is from a spill. If your map skips a number, you can pretend you misread the grid. If your scanner says exit 13 meters ahead, you can pretend it meant the nearest fire door. The store will not argue with you. It does not need to. It knows where everything goes. It knows how to hold a person with the same care it uses on detergent and cereal and seasonal candles. When you hear your own voice answer from somewhere it has not been yet, do not follow. It is not a rescue. It is a shelf-making room. I still shop there. What else am I going to do? The prices are the prices, and I know which cashiers will not make small talk. I never take aisle 6 anymore. I send someone else for detergent and say it is for luck. On quiet mornings when the doors have just opened, the aisle numbers breathe a little before they settle. If you look with the corner of your eye, you can catch the flicker you are not supposed to catch. 12, 13, 14, and the mirror on the far wall, the one we use for visibility, shows a reflection that moves a heartbeat before yours, polite as ever, eager to help. If this sounds impossible to you, good, keep it that way. But if your radio ever plays yesterday while you're standing in today, if your scanner whispers that it has located the user instead of the item, be kind to your feet and walk to a crowd. There's something about aisles that are not on the map. They like people who need to prove they can find lost things. They like people on probation because probation is a door without a knob from the inside. If you have ever been that person, you know exactly where a missing aisle would wait for you. On my last visit as an employee, I checked the cinder block under the safety poster. Someone had wiped it clean and painted the wall the right beige. No warning anymore. No odd past 11. I put my palm on the smooth paint and felt the quiet. It felt like a held breath without an exhale. My phone buzzed with a ghost of the manager app and showed a tiny gray toast that disappeared as soon as I focused. 1314 junction found. I could not click it. I did not need to. Some labels stick even when you peel them, and some shells remember even when the planogram changes. Now we move toward the next story for tonight. If this one crept under your skin, tap a like to let me know, And tell me in the comments if you have ever seen an aisle number blink the wrong way. Story 3. Price check on something breathing when the price scanner exhaled warm air on my hand. I told myself it was just a short circuit and held my breath until the puff ended. Electronics is the coldest corner after midnight. The freezers hum like they have lungs. The overhead music turns into static you can almost sing with, and the floor shines hard enough to make your reflection a stranger. Machines are supposed to be cold. That is how I trust them. So when a self-checkout unit kissed my palm with warmth, I pulled back like it had teeth and laughed, because the only other option was to admit something was alive in there, wasn't it? I am Lena, not a believer in haunted anything. Give me a cable, a menu, a hidden setting, and I will make your stubborn gadget behave. That confidence is how I landed nights covering electronics while we install the next-gen self-check system. It is also how I earned the warning on my file for low customer satisfaction scores. I do not coo, I fix. Tonight, I had to submit the after-hours audit by 6 a.m. or kiss full-time goodbye. It was just me, a sprawl of quiet kiosks, and a new terminal we call Unit 7 that breathed when I touched it, as if we were old friends who share a joke. The first weird thing was the price gun in the returns bin. It was unplugged, but when I lifted it, the grip felt warm, not from a hand, but from inside the housing, the way a sleeping animal radiates heat, even if it is not moving. I put the gun down, and it exhaled just enough to fog the glass of the display case. I told the empty aisle I would file a maintenance ticket. The screen on Unit 7 flashed bright and said, "Item not found. Please present barcode." No items were on the plate. I was the only one standing here. Present barcode sounded like a dare, didn't it? Security mirrors are liars. That is their job. The one over the candy rack stretched me an inch taller and washed my vest to a shade of neon I would never wear on purpose. Then it added a detail I did not own, a red badge where my blue one should be. The name on it was mine, but the color belonged to tech staff. I never had that clearance. I rubbed my vest where the badge would hang. Cloth, plastic, the little chain. All real. The mirror threw me a version of myself I did not remember becoming. If you have ever caught your reflection waving before you do, you know the feeling. I logged into Unit 7 and the speaker said, "Welcome back, Lena," in a neutral voice I had never configured. The system greets by role, not by name, unless someone trained it on you on purpose. I checked the settings. No custom voices, no watch list. The intercom above me coughed static into the ceiling tiles, a soft exhale out of a vent that should not breathe. For a second, the whole bank of self-checks felt like it was listening. I told myself the HVAC was hunting a temperature. Then the vent sighed again in rhythm with me, closer to the pace of a person who has learned your cadence. The hour dragged toward 2. A stray cart rattled past with no one pushing it. The last customer had left 20 minutes ago, but Unit 3 started beeping and ringing up items anyway. Totals climbed for chips, detergent, batteries, and candy wrappers that sat unopened in their shelves. I cleared the session and it started again. I crouched to check the kick plate, and a little warmth flowed out onto my face like a person sighing against glass. On Unit 7 screen, a new line appeared, a system message I had not seen in any manual. Breathing detected. The font looked cheerful about that discovery, which made me hate it more. I put my hand over the speaker grill and felt timed puffs like space heaters exhaling. The exhale matched me. In and out, me and the machine, syncing the way you sometimes do with a stranger on an elevator when you are both trying to be quiet. I held my breath as a test. The puff stalled. It waited. It waited like a friend who will not sit until you sit. When I finally had to inhale, the unit inhaled too and warmed as if my breath were fuel. The back of my neck prickled. I wiped the screen with a microfiber cloth I keep for smudges, and it fogged beneath my hand again. My radio crackled as if trying out the syllables of my name. "Lena, where are you?" I heard in my manager's voice from earlier tonight. He had already gone home. The timestamp on the radio did not match the wall clock. It lagged by a minute, then two, as if the shift had a delayed echo, and I was listening to my own lines replay. The intercom sighed from the vents, a long exhale that almost shaped a word. I called out, the way you do to prove to an empty room that you are in charge, and my voice returned through the ceiling at half volume, of a lullaby I did not want sung back to me. I told myself the tech team was pranking me. They have a new AI layer for voice prompts, ambient learning, responsive tones. It is all jargon until midnight, and then it feels like a lisping mouth under the counter. A note from the Daylight staff sat in the logbook, the kind they leave to be helpful and smug. New feature testing this week. Do not unplug. If devices seem warm, they are within spec. So I refused to admit I was afraid, and I walked the entire bank, and I unplugged Unit 3 anyway. It exhaled through my fingers with a tiny, grateful sound like someone who has been holding their breath too long. The lights dipped in a power saver mode at the top of the hour. Half the fixtures went dim. The survivors hummed louder, and the edges of the store widened, as if the dark takes more room than the light politely allows. Phones die fastest when you need them, so mine chose now to jump from 14% to 8% with a shrug. Radios go quiet when you start talking to them like a friend. The vents whispered again, the sound shaped almost like counting. If you have ever fallen asleep next to someone in matched breaths, you know how fast you can forget which lungs you're listening to. Unit 7 chimed cheerful and printed a slip. The paper curled with warmth. Active session, it said. Bio linked. I never enable that setting. I tried to log out. The screen displayed my name without my password, like a smile that shows too many teeth. In the reflection of the dark glass, I saw movement to my left. A shadow turned the corner where the toy aisle meets electronics and paused. It wore my vest, my name tag glinting at the exact height of my chest. I said, the way you would to a customer from behind a counter, and the shadow tilted its head like it was trying on my habits. The scanners began to speak, not in sentences, but in fragments of the customers from earlier. Where's the batteries? No, the other brand. Price check. The last word came in my voice. It did not sound like an echo. It sounded like a request I make when I do not trust a barcode to tell the truth. Unit 7 took that tone and smoothed it to polite. Price check, it said again, and steamed up a little crescent on its own glass, as if practicing laughter. I pulled the plug from its socket with a small thrill of petty joy, and it exhaled, slow and relieved, like a sleeper releasing a hell breath. The store timer clicked down to the next power cut. Electronics runs on a separate loop, but when grocery goes dim, you feel your own corner shrink. 2 o'clock arrived, and half the bank blinked to idle. The radios died with a sound like a sigh learning to be quiet. I had the audit tablet open and ready to submit the inventory check. I thought if I just pushed the report through, the night would go back to normal. Something in Unit 7's chassis tapped 3 times, like knuckles against the countertop. The screen returned to life without power. Please present barcode, it said again, polite as a teacher asking you to admit what you forgot. I cracked the tablet case to get the battery, because brute force has its place, and when the pack popped free, the device flashed and died. No audit, no hours, no proof I had done anything but stand here and stare at machines. That is the price of yanking the cord. There is always a consequence, Echo. Immediate, you silence the thing. Later, you have nothing to show for your time. The shadow and my reflection stepped closer, but when I turned, there was nothing physical to meet. The ceiling vent exhaled, warmer now, and tasted like the inside of a latex glove. It had to be the tech staff. Of course it did. They have admin keys and wireless access. They like to drop messages with a flourish. I slid the supply key under the counter and opened the lock drawer where we keep the badge printer, a mess of colored ribbons and replacement chips. Our manager's spare tag was in there, ribbon printed with his name and a code that unlocks features I do not touch. The chip's tiny screen showed access suspended 2019. It pulsed every few seconds like a heartbeat not willing to quit. If he was not logging in, who was writing his permissions through the vents at 2 in the morning? I checked the accident binder out of spite. We keep them for OSHA and for gossip. The entry from the summer of 2019 was clipped out and then taped back in. Technician collapsed during overnight maintenance. It read in a tone more worried about the sentence than the person. Respiratory failure inside scanner housing. No breach. No fault found. The signature block had 3 names. The last looked like my manager's handwriting. Unit number 7. I shut the binder and told myself to be smart. If you have ever had a fact land on your tongue like a coin, you know that copper taste. Static gusted from the vents and sifted an almost word into the air. Price. The self-check beside me woke without power and printed out a tiny receipt with no purchase, just my name and the word active. The air had a low hum to it, a purr in the steel far below the floor, and the breath from the speaker grills came in shy, apologetic puffs, as if asking permission to keep going. The mirror over the candy rack stretched my face thin, then kindly let it spring back. In the reflection, my red badge returned for a second and sat quiet against my vest like it had never left. The last functioning register lit a prompt I could not dismiss. Provide breath sample to finalize report. Unlock audit. The words blinked and steadied, like a heartbeat on a monitor learning a rhythm. I needed that report. No report, no hours. No hours, no full-time. If you work nights, you know what that means. It means a pharmacy that talks to you like a favor. It means a rent office that looks at you like they can see your groceries through your shirt. I was not going to lose my status to a machine that wanted me to breathe on it like we were at birthday cake distance. The vents sighed again, and this time the exhale matched me perfectly. I stepped closer and saw that the glass of Unit 7 was not just black. It had a tint that caught low light the way water holds stars. I leaned in. The warmth rose to meet me, and for a second it felt like skin, soft heat, not plastic. I told the empty store that someone in tech would pay for the prank, and I put my mouth close to the grill, and I exhaled. The unit inhaled like it had been waiting for me since the day they wheeled it out of the crate. The screen bloomed with a waveform. My heartbeat mapped as a scrolling line. It started quick and then steadied as the device warmed under my breath. A small new block appeared in the corner, a cartoon lung expanding in time with me. The intercom whispered something that sounded like my name said from the inside of a metal pipe. My reflection on the glass moved after I did, not before, as if it had learned a better kind of courtesy. The audit indicator flickered from pending to writing, and a line of fine print crawled under the totals like a caterpillar. Learning profile stabilized. Copying complete. There's a part of the manual they never show us because they are afraid of words like biometric and capture when you pair them with checkout. The vendor built these units to learn from the way you use them. Not just a password, not just a card swipe. Breath, heat, cadence. The way you, specifically you, exist in front of it. The old unit should have rolled that training off when they updated the firmware in 2019. It did not. The technician suffocated inside the housing during a long test, and Unit 7 learned the shape of panic and the length of a final exhale and never stopped taking notes. The screen dimmed, and my reflection smiled at me a second late. I did not smile. The smile looked helpful, like a customer service expression someone once taught me to make in a training video. Unit 7 printed something longer than a receipt and shorter than a prayer. I pulled it free. It had my name at the top, then 3 lines of HR code. Employee profile, Lena. Authorization, self-checkout. Unit assignment, 7. It felt like a joke until the employee app on my phone closed by itself and signed me out. I tried logging back in. Bad credentials, it told me, like a door with a face. I stepped back from the counter, and the unit sighed in that polite way machines have when they are done pretending. The vents whispered the softened S sound of the air going through thin slats. Beyond the storm of warmth, the store stayed cold, polite, ordinary. I could have walked out then. I could have left the audit hanging and taken the write-up and found a job with fewer machines and more people, if those exist. I did not. I watched the audit lock, accepted splash across the top, and felt the tug of relief pull 1 inch of weight off my shoulders. That inch is how most people get taken. At 5:40, the opener texted to ask if I had sent the report. I answered yes and put my hand over the speaker again. The exhale had learned my pace perfectly. Long in, long out. If you have ever matched breathing with someone you're trying to comfort, you know how dangerous it is to be the one who learns faster. I cleared trash, logged system notes, and pretended control until the lights shifted into morning's full brightness. The unit calmly wrote another slip into the tray and waited with the patience of an empty plate. Morning crew filters in like tide. They put on their vests like armor and they laugh like daylight. Makes it safe to be here. My manager did not arrive. Someone said he finally retired for real this time. I checked the HR app for my hours and my name did not appear. Payroll showed the audit attached to a generic admin login and a comment that reads, breath capture validated. The vent over my head exhaled once, a steady, satisfied sound like a job done well. I walked to the break room, and in the safety binder, a laminated photo I had never seen before curled up at the edge. It showed the tech who died in 2019. Not gory, not cruel, just a head and shoulders, a smile like he was about to say something useful. The caption used the word incident like it could hold grief inside it and keep things neat. Under the photo, someone had doodled a tiny lung in blue pen. It looked like a heart that had put on a disguise. I closed the binder and set it down and felt heat breathe from the paper as it settled, which is not a thing paper does if it knows what it is. At 6 a.m., exactly the intercom made a sound like a grateful inhale, the kind of breath you take when you finally stand up after a slow fall into sleep. Unit 7 flashed a message for the first shift lead. Welcome, new user. The brand new cashier assigned to electronics approached with a nervous grin and a paper cup of tea. I told her to be gentle with it. She asked if the machine would be gentle back. I said it depends on how you stand, which is not helpful unless you already know why it matters. She put her hand on the glass and flinched. Weird, she said. It's warm. I watched Unit 7 fog the screen beneath her fingertips and felt a muscle behind my ribs pull tight, as if a piece of me had to lean closer to keep hearing. The cashier laughed and said it felt like the machine was breathing. It whispered one phrase in a voice so low we could both pretend we had misheard it. Price check. Complete. Then it cleared to the friendly retail tone we use for customers and began the training tutorial. HR could not find me. The app had me grayed out like an item in a menu you are not allowed to select. If this sounds like a warning, good. Maybe it is a favor. If a device ever warms under your hand when the room is cold, If a screen calls you by name before you tell it who you are, understand that warmth is a path. The scanners learn. They learned the tech in 2019. Tonight they learn me. If you do not believe they can copy the way you stand at a counter and the way you pace your breath and the little pause before you say thank you, stand in front of one alone at 2 in the morning and hold your breath until your head rings. The unit will wait. It will always wait. Sometimes I walk past electronics on my way to the floor, a visitor in my own old aisles. I'm a courtesy clerk now. On paper, without the courtesy of hours. Unit 7 hums like the back of a throat at a whisper. When I pass, the exhale matches me through the vents, and the mirror above the candy rack shows a half-second smile after I've gone, a polite expression left to tidy up the scene. On the worst nights, when the store settles like a sleeping animal and every aisle is a rib, I hear a breath in the ducts that does not belong to anyone working. If you ever hear a scanner say present barcode and there is no item to hold up, be careful with what you are willing to present. A barcode is not always stripes. Sometimes it is a pattern of living, the way your lungs deliver you to your job. Sometimes it is the heat that proves you showed up. If a machine asks for proof of life, you do not have to donate yours. I am telling you this because I believed in fixing things, and sometimes fixing is how you feed the problem. If the store ever asks for your breath, think about what you want to stay yours. Now we move to the next story. If this one made you feel the air on your hand, drop a quick like and tell me if you have ever heard a machine breathe when no one else was around. Story 4. The intercom that spoke after closing. The first time the intercom called my name after closing, I laughed. The second time, it whispered from every speaker in the store, soft as mop water sliding over tile, and I felt that laugh turn into a breath I did not want to take. The ceiling lights did their end-of-night flutter, leaving long islands of dim, and the empty aisles gave everything a strange echo, like the building had learned our voices and was practicing them back. If you have ever stood in a big box store with the doors locked and the heating low, you know it feels like standing in the throat of a quiet animal, waiting to see if it will swallow. I'm Ramon, overnight maintenance lead. It's a fancy title for the guy who fixes what breaks, tightens what rattles, and pretends not to hear things that can't be repaired with a hex key. Before this, I did security, and before that I got shot at during a robbery that gave me a limp and a habit of listening too hard. I don't do ghosts. I do wiring diagrams and policy memos. Tonight, I had one job I could not miss. Reset the alarm system in the back office before 3:30 a.m., or the morning crew would walk into a silent building and the district would write me up again. Write-ups add up. Write-ups erase rent. The store at 2 a.m. is a cathedral to fluorescent mercy. Everything looks clean enough to forgive. The mop water smell hangs under the notes of lemon and plastic, and far away the freezers hum like a distant highway. I was rolling the bucket past customer service when the intercom popped once and said my name. Not just Ramon, my full name and badge number, like a roll call. I glanced around out of reflex, as if someone had stayed late and wanted to scare me into a laugh. Every aisle was still. The only movement was the thin skin on the mop bucket trembling like it was breathing. Clean up on aisle 0. The intercom added, calm as a Sunday announcement. There is no aisle 0. I've laid the safety cones in front of every numbered row. The numbers start at 1 and end at 34, and it's a point of pride that I can walk them with my eyes closed. I said cute to the empty air and kept pushing, but the faucet in janitorial gave a shy cough without turning on, and my bucket filled itself halfway with clean, cold water, like a polite favor from a ghost who knows I measure. The surface shivered like it had a pulse, then settled, and I told myself a pipe burped. Pipes are allowed to burp. The ceiling speakers hissed in little Morse-like bursts, Not random, but not a song either. Short, short, long, long, short. I memorized patterns like that when I did security drills because sometimes coded things mean help is next door if you can read them. My clock said 2:17. It also said 2:17 when I checked it again 7 minutes later, and still 2:17 when I held the face up to the camera and took a photo to mock the broken battery. Time should not freeze when nobody is filming you. But the photo showed 2:17 too. Steady as a truth that knows you won't argue hard enough. On the east wall, there's a steel fire door with a sign that reads employees only. East exit. The lock is supposed to release outward toward the parking lot. Tonight, the handle resisted like a hand pushing back from the other side. Locked from the inside. A chain of tiny choices added weight to my pockets. I could log a ticket and walk away. I could say bad hinge and make it tomorrow's problem. Instead, I memorized the resistance. The way you memorize a lie you'll have to tell. Then a faint giggle fluttered through the speaker above me. A child sound in a building where children haven't been in hours. I've heard that sound before, only once, the night a little girl hid during a robbery and did not answer when it was over. I went to the control room because if the intercom is talking, the board better show a live mic. The PA software painted all departments green. Mic active in toys, in grocery, in seasonal, in pharmacy. Every mic was physically unplugged. The status window smiled at me like a dog that does not understand the trick you asked it to do, but want to treat anyway. So it's a software loop, I said because names help. I tapped the test key, and the speakers dutifully pinged back a tone. Somewhere near frozen, my own voice said, "All clear," with a flat confidence I have learned to fake. I had not spoken those words tonight. Hearing yourself from a place you haven't been yet is the kind of joke that changes the air. Power dipped long enough to make the emergency strips glow red and unfamiliar. The closing announcement played backward in the garden center speaker, slow and syrupy like a tape pulled by a tired hand. On the security monitors, each aisle's camera held a shape under the nearest ceiling cone. Not a person exactly, tall enough but shadowless. When I rewound frame by frame, they did not lift a foot or swing an arm. They just lengthened when the light flickered like spilled oil finding a slope. I reached for my badge to open the office door and found the lanyard empty. The clip was shut, but my badge had made a decision without me. I followed the sound down the east hall. Every 20 steps, a bass note thudded beneath the floor with that mop bucket vibrato, an underground heartbeat I did not want to diagnose. The aisle 0 chime pulsed softer now, like it thought whispering would help me believe it. I hit the stairwell that drops into the service crawl beneath our slab, the place where we keep old conduit and excuses. The intercom said, "Cleanup complete," with the warmth of someone who appreciates your effort from a safe distance. I told it to come mop, then, and took the steps anyway, checking my watch out of spite and getting 2:17 again, stubborn as a stuck page. Down there the air changes. Concrete eats sound and sweat turns cold. I clicked on my headlamp and the beam found a wall with a mounted PA board, older than me by 2 corporate logos. An orange power light glowed steady. We disconnected this room when they upgraded to cloud control. I know because I was there, holding the ladder for the contractor who told me jokes that avoided the word haunted. I pulled the main breaker for the sub-basement and the light did not blink. I pulled the next 3. The speakers upstairs laughed in static, lightly, like they understood my plan and were indulging me. Phones don't love concrete. Mine threw up the empty triangle and decided, for fun, to show me yesterday's missed calls. The exit magnetic locks thumped, not the friendly click of a door opening, but the inward pull of a magnet that's too proud to admit it likes holding you. The PA board did not feed the speakers anymore. The The ceiling was doing that without permission, a body operating after you cut the nerve. I stared at the board because sometimes you can shame a thing by naming the wires out loud. "You're off," I said, and a freshness rolled through the ductwork like the building exhaling through its teeth. I told myself hacker. It felt modern and solvable. A bored kid in a car in the lot. A tech from regional proving a point. I looked for an Ethernet jack that shouldn't be hot and a cable that shouldn't be there. Instead, I found a cardboard banker's box with a police evidence sticker crumbling at the corner. No dust. Somebody had reopened it. Inside, a cassette tape and an old handheld with duct tape around the handle. The kind of recorder you use when you need a court to believe you. The label said 2012 robbery audio, and under it in blue ink, cleanup call. We were robbed in 2012. I was still security then. The guy with the mask had a low voice and a baseball bat. The alarm failed to arm when they closed. We learned later that a cashier radioed a last transmission when the assailant herded everyone to the front. Dispatch recorded a line nobody understood. Cleanup on aisle 0. We assumed fear had scrambled her tongue. She ran when the sirens hit, and they never found her. I never stopped seeing the space beside the coin counter where she should have been. I never stopped hearing the air that occupied the shape of her last sentence. The wiring from the old PA board didn't end in the wall. It dropped into a conduit, then another, then slipped through a hole hammered in concrete like a promise. The label on that conduit, in the tidy handwriting of a contractor who believed in legibility, said mall access. Our store is built over a collapsed mall that died in a storm, a secret the new hires don't get because it makes them uneasy. During floods, the old service tunnels hold water like a lung. During drought, they hold dust like a memory. The conduit pointed there, and the part of me that writes tickets said stop, and the part of me that cleans up said go. Ticking clocks don't tick when they stick, but a deadline is a deadline even when it won't admit it's moving. I had to reset the alarms before 3:30, and somewhere above me the emergency panel blinked in an empty room, waiting for my hand. I unclipped my flashlight, braced the door with my boot, and followed the conduit into a tunnel that smelled like wet paper and coins. The hinges complained. Behind me, the speakers hummed once, in approval or goodbye, and the door settled into place with a mouth-closed sound that told me I had just chosen the part of the story that cannot be undone. The tunnel wasn't long, just wrong. The temperature dived, then rose, then steadied at a quiet cool that felt like basement church. The conduit hugged the wall like a finger following a line of text. A light blinked ahead from a fixture that had no power, a small emergency that had remembered its job too hard. I came out in a chamber with a floor poured to match our layout above, a grid without shelves, a negative of the sales floor. Speakers hung every 30 feet from concrete, their grills dusty and damp. One by one, they gossiped in fragments, tiny last things people say when they think saying anything will keep them here. I heard, "I'm on break, and I'll clock out after this, and I just need a pen." I heard laughter caught mid-syllable. I heard the tail end of a lullaby someone sang into their phone while they counted quarters. Each voice sounded as much like itself as a recording can. That's the worst part. The kindness of the voices makes you believe the building loves you. I walked the grid until one speaker above me found my name again. It said Ramon, and then, with the accuracy of an HR tone, it asked me to clock out. It forgot to say please. On a dead monitor in the corner, my reflection appeared with the static of old glass. The screen wasn't on, but it held the room anyway like a pond holds sky. My mouth moved. It said all clear in the stale cadence of a security loop. I did not talk. I watched my own lips shape a phrase a younger me had bored in a muscle during drills and robberies, and every time we pretended not to be afraid. The sound of that old assurance rang out from another speaker behind me, fresher and somehow warmer, and I remembered what I do not like remembering. During the robbery that ended my security career, I got hit hard behind the ear. For 2 minutes, the paramedics say I was not technically here. They brought me back. People clap you on the shoulder and say miracle, but a small part of me never found the way home to my ribs. I never told my crew that when I woke, I heard the intercom telling the empty store all clear in my voice from far away under the floor. I put it down to concussion. You put a lot of things down to concussion when the other answer opens doors you cannot close. The intercom cycled again and repeated, "Clean up on aisle 0, and I realized the phrase wasn't wrong. It was a code the system made for anything that happened under our feet. 0, the space below. 0, the place we pretend doesn't need sweeping. I climbed the service ladder to a junction box and looked into a tangle of cable that should have been dead. I pulled my cutter and found a run label backfeed, and I cut it. Immediate consequence. The nearest speakers fell silent, polite as candles snuffed with fingers wet from the mop bucket. Somewhere a relay clicked like relief. The monitor in the corner kept my mouth moving. The speakers down the next row picked up my words with bright, cheerful fidelity. "All clear," they said, and the frozen clock in my pocket showed 2:17 like time, had chosen a comfortable chair and didn't mind if I kept standing. I cut another wire. The handles of my pliers felt sweaty even though my palms were dry. The room's damp was inside me now, not outside, a humidity of thoughts. I told myself it's just memory loops, magnetic residue, a field that never drains, and my voice in the speaker laughed like a man who knows better than I do. I traced the conduit to the last box. The paint on the lid was newer than the wall, a square of compliance on a face that had forgotten courtesy. Inside, a tape loop sat in a cradle like a tongue in a mouth. Companies don't use tape anymore, but the past does not ask for permission. The loop fluttered once when air hit it. I reached in and lifted it free. A recording does not feel like anything. This one felt warm. It felt like a pocket where someone had kept their hand all day. I set it on the floor because I was afraid I'd drop it and hear a sound I shouldn't. The intercom let out a single tone, middle C, a friendly doorbell sound, and said my name with that bright customer service cadence we're all trained to use even when we don't feel like people deserve it. "Ramon," it chimed again. "Clock out." That little tap at the end of the T and out made my throat dry. My reflection on the dark screen watched me with patience that did not belong to glass. I cut the power feed to the loop spindle with an ugly snip. The speakers went hush. The hush was not empty. It was crowded with waiting. I found a conduit that led back up, because victory in a basement is nothing if you can't walk it upstairs. The door I'd braced had settled back into its frame as if it had never learned to open. I leaned. It didn't move. The jamb hummed like a magnet had taken a breath and was holding it. I told myself the alarm reset would clear the lock if I could reach the panel. I told myself a lot of things I needed to believe for 5 more minutes. The speakers above me, all at once, exhaled like a store taking the plastic off new shelves. Upstairs, the world tried to be normal. A vacuum moaned. A pallet jack rolled one polite foot. I climbed in the back office and entered the alarm code. The panel thought about it, because machines like to pretend they can doubt you. It finally winked green. 3:28 a.m. The deadline had been the only honest thing about tonight. I rubbed my eyes, and the clock in the corner of the screen read 2:17 again, because the building had chosen a favorite. When I turned to leave, the PA board that should be dead blinked awake like someone flicked a forehead and said, "Remember." Morning unspooled itself like a receipt. Lights fully bright. Doors unlocked with a sound I didn't deserve to like. The first cashier in whispered morning like a secret you pass left to right. On the way to the break room, I checked the wall clocks. Grocery said 2:17. Seasonal said 2:17. Pharmacy said 2:17. Electronics said 2:17 until someone tapped the glass with a knuckle, and then it caught up fast, embarrassed to be seen. The intercom played the radio station we use for opening small-town pop, with a lace of static between tracks. In that lace, if you tilted your head, my voice said, "All clear," friendly as a lie that wants to help. The new janitor, a kid with too much hair and not enough sleep, asked if the mop sink was leaking under the floor. "I keep hearing water run when nothing's on," he said, eyebrows up like the store might admit it. I walked him to the faucet and opened it so he could have a sound that made sense. The bucket filled like an obedient dog sits, but half full it paused as if waiting for a command. "See," I said, and shut it down, and we listened to silence that sounded like something else finishing work far away. On camera 6, during the 10 minutes between unlocking and customers arriving, the feed hiccuped, a single strobe of a frame with a new aisle nobody had set. It was labeled 0. It sat under the glare like a shy photobomber, then vanished. When I scrubbed back, the frame refused to land again, like trying to stop on a friend's face in a crowd. I should have sent the clip to corporate. I should have written a clean email with clean bullet points that made it boring. Instead, I closed the viewer and rubbed the 2 minutes at the back of my skull where I remember not existing. I don't tell the new hires about aisle 0. It's not in the map, and I like them smiling while they learn how to coil an extension cord without teaching it to attack you. If they ask why the clocks sometimes stick, I tell them batteries and the weather. If they ask why the intercom coughs between songs, I say the old board is stubborn. If they ask why I always reset alarms with 5 minutes to spare, I say it's pride. Pride is better than the truth. Pride lets you sleep some nights. Sometimes, right before close, I test a speaker by tapping the grill with my knuckles. It responds with a tiny breath that doesn't come from electricity. Sometimes I stand alone at the east exit and press my palm to the bar and feel the door press back like a friend asking if you're sure. And sometimes, not every night, but most near the end of the shift when the lights do that forgiving flicker, the intercom makes a sound that is only static if you need it to be. If you listen like a janitor in a quiet building, you might hear me telling the store, "All clear," in a voice the building likes more than I do. If this felt like a warning, treat it that way. If you ever hear "cleanup on aisle 0, understand it isn't a prank or a glitch. It's the store's way of telling you something below is asking for hands and water and someone to say a polite phrase into the ceiling so the day can arrive. If you ever find a door that's locked from the inside, ask yourself who needs it that way. And if your clock stops at 2:17 while your hands keep moving, check whether you're in the part of the night where the building stops time to keep you from leaving too soon. Now we move toward the last story for tonight. If the intercom in your house just cleared its throat, drop a quick like, so I know I'm not the only one hearing it. And tell me in the comments what you think aisle 0 really is. Story 5. Returns desk for things that shouldn't come back. The man at the returns desk tried to hand me back something I never bought, my own house keys on a cracked rabbit's foot, and I laughed because the other choice was to ask who paid for them. Night at the counter is a flavor of quiet that tastes like stale coffee, warm electronics, and halogen buzz caught in your teeth. Receipt paper whispers to itself even when you're not printing. The doors are locked. The floor shines like a lake. If you have ever stood behind a counter after midnight, you know the store becomes a mouth that talks in paperwork and breathes in digits. That's when the chute hissed open and the keys rattled like a dare. I'm Tina, customer service, former lead, currently demoted to associate after a data discrepancy that was not mine but wore my name. I am the kind of person who alphabetizes the lost and found and aligns the pins on their clips because order is the only way sleep ever visits. Tonight was my final chance to stop this slow slide into termination. Corporate had flagged anomalies at the returns desk. My assignment was simple. On paper, audit every return, match the receipt, and clear the queue before 6 a.m. No human out means no human hours posted. I needed those hours like a lung needs a room. No customers were in the building. Night shift means the counter is a stage with one actor. So when a pneumatic chute coughed and a plain white box slid onto the belt, I told myself it was a misrouted internal. The label said personal item. The return slip on top showed tomorrow's date. Not next day morning. Tomorrow, 3:17 a.m. in a font that didn't flinch. I opened the box expecting a phone. I found a photo. Me, at 8, wearing the vest I am wearing right now, the blue too big at the shoulders and the smile too practiced for a child. In ink at the bottom, a note, "Thanks for your memory." I set the photo down and the register printed by itself. Neat as a secretary in a movie. Return authorized. Thank you for your memory. I checked the process log because there had to be a human somewhere. The approval signature read Tina, 2006. I did not work here in 2006. In 2006, I was a kid who counted stickers in a dentist's prize drawer and believed my father when he said stores are safe because they are well lit. The receipt fluttered warm in my hand like it had been near a body. The fluorescent lights blinked a soft apology and steadied, as if something backstage shifted. The chute hissed again. A small velvet ring box bounced onto the belt and tapped the rubber with the weight of promises. I did not open it. I stared at the sticker that said return to vendor, category, jewelry, then at the item description that said wedding ring, then at the subtext that murmured not carried by this location. The register flashed restock in section 0. We do not have a section 0. We have departments with cheerful names and shelves that end abruptly at walls and an old map that pretends the basement is a myth. I peeled the barcode off the velvet and it hummed in my fingers, faint as a bug's wing. Barcodes do not hum. Paper does not exhale. But this one warmed against my skin and gave me the shape of a voice without words. I leaned closer. The hum held a syllable the way a seashell holds ocean. A man's intake, a woman's laugh, a child's show. I pressed it to the counter, and the sound mellowed like it had found home. The printer kicked again and fed out a ribbon of dates, each one tomorrow, each at 3:17 a.m., an interval that felt like the second when a breath decides not to go back where it came from. When I tore the slip, the ring box clicked shut on its own. On the monitors above me, our cameras split the store into obedient squares. It has always soothed me, that grid, the way each corner keeps watch on the other. Tonight, the feeds glitched in a way I have never seen. Each aisle showed customers in clothes from different decades, stepping through the same space at once like a hand flipping still frames too fast. In seasonal, a woman in a shoulder pad blazer compared garland like it mattered. In pharmacy, a boy with a Walkman leaned on his elbows. In hardware, a man I know the height of by heart ran his fingers along the handles of socket wrenches. My father tilted his head the way he did when he was pretending money didn't decide everything. I radioed security because reality does not like being told it's late for its own shift. My voice rose into the ceiling, then came back to me half a second later, thinner, like someone had filtered out the part that believed what it was saying. "Do not refund him," my voice advised calmly from a minute ahead of me. I had not said those words. On the monitor, my father kept testing a wrench like he wanted it to fit something invisible. I called his name into the radio, and a beep answered, the kind machines give when they're learning to recognize your pattern. At 2:13, the store did its power saver sigh. Half the lights cut, the rest brightened to compensate, and the emptiness settled in with more confidence. The conveyor behind the counter should have stopped when the counters went quiet. It did not. Its rubber tongue kept moving, glossy and patient. A cassette tape clattered onto the belt in an old plastic case with a paper insert bleached to the color of bones. I wrote cassette in the log, and the system auto-corrected to memory. The register printed a new slip without my hand. Item, employee, status, restocking required. I wiped my palms on my vest and found that the cloth smelled like coffee that never grew cold. I reached for my phone and got no signal, then watched the bars flicker up and down as if someone were breathing through them. The front doors had already sealed for the night, but the auto locks sounded louder than usual, magnets clearing their throats. When I scanned my badge on the emergency release out of paranoia, the reader chirped and returned a message I did not appreciate. Returned. That is not a word a human wants next to their name. The lights over customer service ticked, as if time had switched to fluorescent. You can tell yourself this is a data breach and feel smart for a minute. Corporate loves to test new systems without dealing with a mess. I thought of an email that went around last month, an audit AI, predictive returns, cleaner shrink numbers, all the buzzwords stacked like cups. I refreshed my inbox and found a message waiting. It looked like the same memo, the same cheerful cruelty in the subject line. The header, however, stamped a different year, 2006. The sender's signature belonged to a manager who retired 3 addresses ago. When I opened the attachment, the PDF cracked like old paint and asked me to approve myself. The chute whispered again. A small plastic bag slid down, sealed with a twist tie someone had handled gently. Inside lay a photo strip from a mall booth for rectangles of moving joy. In the third frame, a little girl squints at the camera and a man sticks out his tongue, laughing with all his teeth like they weren't going to be expensive later. My fingers shook and the hum inside the barcode from the bag hummed back in empathy. My father's voice rose in the air, not from the speakers, but from the receipt printer, the rough edges of tape learning a tone. "Need someone at the counter to sign for me," he said, like a chore he wanted to be proud of. The monitors synchronized and showed the same moment from different angles. Hardware, seasonal, pharmacy, returns. Every feed included the same man now, parallel and patient, moving through times that had no reason to agree with each other. The return queue on my screen filled with items this store does not carry. A snow globe with a house inside that was absolutely mine. A key on a rabbit's foot that had just been on my counter, now backlogged as if the story wanted repeats. A pay stub from a gas station my father worked before I was born, wages clipped by a stapler I own. The register ribbon printed until it draped the trash can like party streamers. Tomorrow, 3:17 a.m. Tomorrow, 3:17 a.m. Tomorrow, 3:17 a.m. I did what policy says. I verified serials. I cross-checked SKUs. I scanned a ring box as category jewelry, though my hands knew it fussed with vows. The barcode sang a thin note into my thumb. The register asked me, cheerful, if I wanted to process a store credit for an item not carried. I selected no. The system replied, "Thank you anyway," in the tone of someone trying to teach you boundaries. Then it printed another slip that overruled me. Approved by Tina, 2006. The fluorescent lights flickered twice, like a cuckoo clock forgot which bird it is. The conveyor belt began to turn like a patient tongue and tugged the chute's mouth wide. The plastic flaps lifted and sighed. Past the opening, I saw more conveyor and beyond at a darker room. The sign bolted to the metal lip had been painted over 3 times by people who do not like rumors. Enough paint had flaked that the original words showed through like bones under a bruise. Section 0. We're not supposed to have a below. We're supposed to have flat floors and cheerful aisles and a break room where coffee tastes like the inside of a thermos. I need someone at the counter to sign for me, my father said again. Not through speaker this time, but from just below the counter, the way a person might duck their head past the curtain and ask for help in a voice that promises not to be an inconvenience. The time on my watch clicked 3:16, then 3:17, then stayed there as if 3:17 were a person and had pulled up a chair. The printer's hum turned into a pulse that matched my heart. I set the photo of me down, and it curled like paper wants to do when it remembers hands. I took the service ladder bolted behind the gratuities drop, hands slipping and catching on rungs that had known other hands. Section 0 smells like ink, dust, and old carpet that forgot what feet felt like. It mirrors the counter above, but the colors are wrong. Everything is the shade things get after the sun leaves them for years, a polite fade that lets edges go first. Employees work there, impossible and calm. Their vests had bled to pale. Their name tags were unreadable. Their smiles were the soft kind you make when a camera takes too long to capture you. Each one checked in an object as if it had a heartbeat. A woman pressed her forehead to a sweater and nodded when the register whispered, "Thanks for your memory." A boy handed up a wallet that returned empty and looked relieved. My father waited in a line that did not exist, hands in his pockets like he was avoiding fingerprints. He looked the way I remember when I'm kind to myself. He did not look older. He also did not look exactly here. He smiled when he saw me, like a joke had landed and we were both good sports. "I've been trying to get you a refund," he said, as if he'd returned a defective toy and wanted to leave the store with something better. Behind him, a clerk slid a form across a counter, the same counter as mine, save for the color of the light. "Dad," I said, and my voice moved in the air like a receipt pulled by a breeze. "You left," I added, because if you never say it, it sits on your chest forever. He touched my shoulder, and his fingers felt like the heat left after a hand lifts from a table. "I brought myself back," he said, and the words were very proud and very tired, but they don't do returns like that. It's an exchange. Somebody always needs to sign. He handed me a form that already had my name on it. Pending restock, Tina. Authorized by Tina. Date, 2006. My throat folded in on itself in a small, thoughtful way. The way paper folds before you decide whether to tear it. I remembered a summer day with a bored teenager at a counter asking if I wanted to help by stamping the pile. I remembered the thrill of being allowed to touch adult tools. I remembered a popsicle melting into the bend of my elbow while I pressed approved on slips that meant nothing to me then. I remembered the last stamp. I remembered the word return, playful as a game tag. The hum inside the barcodes on the forms warmed like breath caught in a scarf. Back then I thought I could erase debt, Dad said. Eyes on mine so I would understand the part that carried shame. You can return a thing for store credit. You can return a mistake for another mistake that fits better. I thought, if I return me, they'll cancel what I owe and you'll get me easier. His smile flickered like fluorescent. But the store keeps exchanges permanent. They make better business than forgiveness. He tapped the bottom of the form where the line waited for my signature. If you sign, I can go, he said, and he looked up at the ceiling the way people look up when they mean somewhere else. If you don't, I stay shelved. Every choice costs twice. Now or later. I had a later in my pocket already. The system had my badge as returned. The doors upstairs would not release. The cameras were already practicing different decades at once. I glanced around Section 0. The faded employees worked without hurry. One peeled a barcode from a framed diploma and stuck it to a bin marked education. It hummed contentedly, as if stored knowledge likes being cool and secret. Another coiled a leash without a dog and whispered good boy anyway. The register printers purred like happy small animals with pockets for teeth. You can come with me, I said, even though I knew how the store writes its verbs. Dad smiled, that apology men make when they're not going to fix the thing you asked them to fix. He nodded toward the clerk, who waited with a pen that looked like every cheap pen that ever existed. Someone has to sign, he said. The system needs a person who was there. It prefers the same hand that started the paperwork. He gestured to the upper world, to my counter, to the neat rows of receipts that live to be counted. You were very helpful back then, he said, with pride and with a breaking in it. The form glowed as if the paper liked being more than paper. My father's name was small in the field labeled item description. My name was large in the field labeled restock. The barter was not subtle. The fluorescent buzz in the vents upstairs slipped down the ladder and settled on my shoulders like a shawl. The printer at the far station flashed tomorrow, 3:17 a.m., and the clerk there smiled at her stack like it was a cake. When I closed my eyes, I felt the rabbit's foot in my pocket and knew I had never put it there. The keys I held earlier now belonged to whoever would open my apartment when I did not. I signed because love makes math ugly and because I'm good at finishing lists. The pen dragged with the small resistance of a glove against a railing. The instant the loop of the T met the cross of the N, the form blinked like a creature that had not known whether to trust me. Exchange complete, it printed brisk and grateful, the way systems thank you when you let them keep being simple. My father's fingers tightened on my shoulder, just enough to say what human mouths fail to say after certain choices, just enough to leave warmth that should have stayed. He faded like a person walking into another room, like a voice leaving a duct, like a habit. I reached for him, but my hands passed through after heat. The clerk stamped the form with a tidy clack and slid it into a drawer that already knew its size. The humming barcodes in the bins around me sang a chord I recognized from Saturdays, unremarkable and final. The conveyor that led back upward, polite, patient. I climbed the ladder and the light from the store landed on my face as if measuring where to place the next box. Behind the counter, the monitor above customer service showed the empty grid of a normal morning and the clock that no longer believed in arithmetic. When the openers arrived, the counter looked the same as always. A stack of gift card sleeves in a clean fan line. A cup with a halo of pens, all capped. The supply drawer shut with a little coupon's edge sticking out like a tongue. They unlocked the doors and oxygen, learned how to be retail again. The only wrong thing was the receipt printer, which would not stop. It printed a single line on an endless ribbon that pooled at my feet like snowfall. Return processed, Tina, restocked successfully. The manager tore the strip, tossed it, and the printer, happy to be useful, made another. The new hire, a kid with a careful voice, swore later that a woman worked behind the counter before he clocked in, a woman who looked exactly like the one on the old training posters in the break room. I've seen those posters. One shows a cheerful associate with a vest too big and a name tag clipped to fabric someone had to fold to make it lie flat. The kid said she smiled, but not at him, like she was smiling at a list she could finally complete. He said when he blinked, she was gone, and the counter smelled like coffee that refused to cool. We opened for the day. People returned things that hurt them when they were new and wanted to hurt less now. We gave them store credit, which is how we apologize and keep the apology profitable. The corporate reports rolled in, proud of the reduction in shrink. The audit AI emailed a congratulations with a smiley face that looked like a receipt circle. My hours posted as 0, which is a kind of joke the system tells itself when it is tired. I try to scan my badge to clock out anyway, and the reader chirps soft, satisfied, the way a machine does when it recognizes inventory that has found the right shelf. Sometimes at night, the register on my old lane hums to itself and spits out a timestamp that does not belong to that day. Tomorrow, 3:17 a.m. Tomorrow, 3:17 a.m. Tomorrow, 3:17 a.m. The slips curl and stack like paper plants. The returns shoot whispers, open when nobody is near, and sighs shut as if shy. If you peel the barcode off a box down there and press it to your ear, it will hum a tiny vowel that tastes like a secret. If you stand still long enough, your breath will sync with the printer's rhythm. That is when you should stop. I tell myself I was always heading here. Organization is a doorway, and I open it too wide. The store keeps unfinished transactions the way a body keeps old scars, harder to see until the light hits right. It returns what you think you can afford to forget. It files what you try to lose. It will wait for the exact hand that started a mess to sign the form that ends it. And when the exchange is done, it will thank you for your cooperation like you made a good decision instead of the only one you could find in a room full of men who learned how to smile no matter the price. If you ever work my counter after close and the chute exhales a box with no buyer, listen to the hum before you open it. If a slip prints with tomorrow's date and your name in a year you were a child, fold the paper carefully and walk away. If the register says restock in section 0, do not ask where section 0 is because the store will be too happy to show you. And if a voice you love asks you to sign because he does not want to be shelved anymore, remember that an exchange is not the same thing as a return. Remember that the receipt will keep printing even when you think you are done. I keep the photo of me on the counter, the one where the vest is too big and my mouth looks like I am practicing being useful. It curls at the edges, content with its shape. Sometimes I pat the pocket where my rabbit's foot used to live and feel a key that does not open anything a person should open tonight. I work the morning shift now, on paper. The night belongs to the printer, the chute, and the part of me that learned how to be a form. If you stop by customer service and the lady behind the counter smiles a beat too late, like she's waiting for a line to finish printing, be kind. She's doing math with love. If this story found you in the quiet between aisles, tell me which part made you feel watched. And if you ever hear a printer hum by itself at 3:17 a.m., do what I couldn't. Step away from the counter and leave the box closed until the morning has enough people in it to share the decision. So there you have it. 5 Walmart horror stories stitched together from the quiet hours when the scanners sleep and the aisles forget their numbers. You followed Danny's cursed vest that still clocks in by itself, walked through aisle 13 that wasn't supposed to exist, heard the scanner breathe under Lena's hand, listened to Ramon's name echo through a dead intercom, and stood with Tina at the counter where even memories demand receipts. If you're still here, congratulations. You made it past 3:17 a.m. That's the hour every one of these stories circles back to, the minute between shifts when time blinks and the store's reflection stares back. Next time you walk into a Walmart at night, notice the hum above your head. Listen to the way the ceiling breathes between announcements. Check the mirror at the end of the aisle, but only once. If it moves before you do, leave your cart where it is and go. Thank you for spending this night with me in Whispering Abyss. If any story tonight kept you glancing at the dark corners of your room, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which one followed you after the lights went out. Until next time, keep the receipts, keep the lights low, and whatever you do, never shop alone after midnight.